Looking forward to seeing you again soon, by Jay Wilburn. It really was a good visit, Tony Koppel thought, as he stood between his living room and kitchen reading his mother's text. When the text came through, let's say when the text first came through, it had been less than an hour since she left, so either she had driven 200 miles an hour due south between Flagstaff and Phoenix, or she wasn't home yet. I'm going to need to put a comma there, I think. All right, needs more bears. I agree. Well, I mean, what story isn't better with bears? And if I were as talented as an author as Frank Edler, then I would make them exploding bears, of course. When is that exploding bear story coming out, man? Exploding bears, exactly, Daniel. Thank you for the great visit. I'm stopping for gas. We'll drop by the grocery store before I get home. Thanks again for having me. I'm glad you're back in Arizona. I'm going to add a little thing here. No, I'm not going to add anything. Rose. All right, January. Well, that's right around the corner. I guess you're not going to put it out on the 1st. Although that would be a ballsy move, putting a book out on January 1st for publishing. All right. Mom always signed her text messages with her name like it was a note card. Never Mom, always Rose. He smiled and texted back, "Look forward to seeing you again soon." He pocketed his phone and entered the kitchen, but then couldn't remember what he came here for. Probably food, maybe a drink, but he stood there waiting for his brain to come up with his last kitchen-related thought. That's when the unease first set in. There was no real reason for him to fear something was going to happen to his mother on this particular trip home, but the omen clung hard to the dark and shadowy parts of his mind. Like a tumor, it sent tendrils out to feed upon his fears and superstitions. Let's say in the hidden portions of his thoughts. Okay. She was getting older, that was true. She hadn't been young when she had him, and she was getting on up there, even though he had graduated college recently. But she was lively and drove just fine. Say his father had seemed fine too, but was no longer with them. No, it will go on Godless first. Don't have an exact date. I'm starting to get to where I'm publishing more stuff on Godless, even if it's going to be up on Amazon later. His father had seemed fine too, but was no longer with them. All right. What's Godless? Okay, Kedman, Godless.com is a kind of an alternative platform for Amazon. It mostly has horror, but they're open to any kind of publishing. And you just put ebooks on there, and there's a good audience of people that are buying things. Usually this stuff is put up there a little cheaper than what it goes on Amazon for, but that's not always the case, and especially not for longer works. So just check that out, godless.com, and see what books are there, and then you can sign on as an author and share like shorts. You can share shorter pieces on there or full novels. You can share stuff that you already have on Amazon, but some people share stuff there exclusively, and I've done that with a few things. Actually, if you go to my About page, there's several stories there that are only on Godless, like Curse of the Rat Man and a few others. If you click on those, you'll see the Godless site. Frank Edler says, I'm trying Godless early release as opposed to doing Kindle pre-order. I agree with that. Godless is great for a first push and exclusive reads. Ratman was awesome. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. Can always use the love as a writer. All right. Tony made a move to the fridge, but pulled up short again. That dark omen took the place of all other thoughts and memories. He pictured something terrible happening to her at the gas station. He pictured accidents. He pictured a fall shortly after she got home, and he wouldn't think to check in with her again for days. Let's say not usually. All right. Oh, bookmark the page. Good deal. And of course, I got a number of stories on there if you're looking for something to check out. Maybe the fear had started earlier. The pandemic had dragged on into a second year. That dread sort of hung over everything, and Tony more than once thought about this being the last time he might ever see her. He was still haunted by the last words to his father. Words he had not confessed to Mom, not to anyone. All right. Again, it was just random thoughts. It was the whole idea of appreciating your loved ones because you never knew which time might be the last time. It was a reminder to make the most of each day. It was most motivational meme shit, nothing more. But now, after typing that text about seeing her again, he felt like he had jinxed it. All silly superstition, fed by the unfocused fear of a deadly virus disrupting life as we all knew it. But still, if that was his last text, it would haunt him. Let's say it too would haunt him. He took out his phone again, and his fingers hovered over the screen with that same detached feeling of walking into a kitchen and forgetting why you did it. If the last was a bad omen, then texting something else might just be doubling down. What if he texted her as she was pulling out of the gas station and it distracted her? What if that was the self-fulfilling prophecy he feared? All right, I need to put a question mark there. He almost put his phone away, but texted anyway. Mom, with a question mark. He waited and waited. No dots came up. No response at all. That could just mean that she had already pulled away from the pumps and did not check her phone while driving. That was good. That was probably it, and he just needed to put his dark feelings away because he had no control over them anyway. His final text to Mom would be just that, with a question mark. He started to shake where he stood. Without much more internal debate, he took up his keys and wallet, barely remembering to lock his door on the way out. He pulled from his designated parking spot and drove out to the highway on autopilot. His mind lingered between all the horrible things that might have befallen his mother as a result of the last cursed text. Tony made it a couple miles down the road before he realized the pinging sound from his dash was about his seatbelt. He got it on with only slight swerves into other lanes. The road was relatively empty, so he did not suffer for his mistakes this time. Let's say this time, question mark. But what about Mom? What did he write that he... Why... No. Why did he write that he looked forward to seeing her again? Tempting fate. Tempting fate, space, like that. All right, 2.5 hours. That's how long it would take for him to get to her house from his place. Sorry, I'm trying to make these sentences a little clearer here. From his place with light traffic. But if he passed her, her car in the gas station, her car in the gas station where she was abducted, her bleeding out in a ditch where she ran off the road checking his text and trying to contact him back. He felt 14 again. Finding out his father had died. Just like that. Never another word again. He shook his head and kept driving faster than he should have. After a few more worry-filled miles, he thought to check his gas gauge. All right, let me fix a typo there. His gas gauge. Maybe he was going to stop and be the one never to return. He thought he might prefer that to losing his mom, but the tank was mostly full. All right, let's say she would feel otherwise. He knew, but the tank was mostly full. The car got good gas mileage, so he should be fine to get to her house and discover her fate. Most of his co-workers drove Teslas and Priuses. His bosses drove Mercedes or BMWs. Tony still liked his oddball used Kia Soul that he still couldn't really afford, even with his new tech job. Mom had driven away in her 2010 Subaru Forester. Let's say, and he would have his eyes open for it the whole way. Years ago, his father had driven off in an old pickup truck that last time. Let's say Tony couldn't recall the model or the year. If he ever saw his mother again, maybe she would remember. All right. Good stuff. Let's keep rolling here. Tony picked up his phone and called her number. It didn't even ring before going to voicemail. He didn't leave one. That could mean she turned off her phone while driving, which would be great news. It could also mean something happened to her phone as something terrible was happening to her. He sped up a little more as he passed another exit on his flight south. She had said she was glad he was back in Arizona. Even in the grip of his irrational fears, he smiled at that. He had left their home in Phoenix to go to college in California, only to be brought back to Arizona. Okay. I was trying to be clever with the wording there, and I think it just made it confusing. Brought back to Arizona a couple hundred miles north in Flagstaff. Mom had moved from their old home to a bungalow and Regal Ranch on the other side of Phoenix. No reason to keep up that big house when she was there alone. He realized he'd have to be the one to sell her new house if something happened to her. All right. Rolling right along. Tony took a moment to pass a convoy of semis. He really tested the limits of his Kia and the speed limit laws. No cops in sight so far. Since the pandemic started, the roads had belonged to the semis, bringing supplies to everyone sheltering in place. All right, I got a dropped word there. Many people were returning to life as best they could, but Tony and his company were still largely working from home. He loved and hated it in equal measures. Once the vaccines were available to everyone, then maybe these strange days would all finally be over. He wondered... let me make a new paragraph here. He wondered how his father would have reacted to all this. His best guess was the man wouldn't have reacted well. All right. He did like his job, though, and liked that they took his health seriously. He hated Zoom meetings more than in-person meetings. The joke around the office before everything went remote was that the Republican senators had helped make Arizona desirable to all these new tech companies, but the companies, those companies taking advantage of those tax breaks brought in a lot of progressive voters who might vote out those same senators in the next election. All right. Let's say his dad wouldn't have found that very funny at all. All right. He passed a car parked on the side of the road at an odd angle. Okay, I need to change the A to an. At an odd angle. He almost slammed on his brakes. He knew it wasn't a Subaru, even from a distance. He knew it was miles from where she would have texted about getting gas farther south, but he still almost screamed to a halt to look for her body inside the rusty abandoned sedan. A dingy... Is that correct? I feel like I put dingy there. A dingy... Yep, that's how dingy works. A dingy t-shirt flapped in the dry winds where it was rolled up in the driver's window, and Tony raced on southward, adding to that wind as he went. He had a moment of panic as he thought he might have forgotten his masks. He wasn't one who wore them while in his car, but he was serious about following the safety rules while in public. His mother was a nurse. She worked in hospice care and also had plenty of stories about the horrors going on in overcrowded ERs and hospitals all over the state. She had been able to get her vaccine early, being a frontline worker. He would get his as soon as he qualified for one down the road. This was one of those times when being young and perfectly healthy might be a disadvantage. His father was older than his mother by quite a bit, and that was part of why he had that heart attack. All right, let me make that 2 words. That heart attack when Tony was still 14 and hateful to the man. He felt his father deserved it back then. Now he didn't know. All right. Continuing on here, mostly what I'm adding is about the father. That I felt like since it was a single mom, he didn't get mentioned, and probably his existence would add something to this story. Maybe that was all this extended moment of panic was about. Afraid for her, afraid for himself, just afraid. He kept driving. Every exit he passed had him looking at stations as if he might spot her vehicle on the fly. He fought the temptation to pull off and look for her at every exit. If she wasn't home when he got there, missing word, then he might do so on the way back. All right, I'm going to add something else in here. He passed that creepy gas station and sprawling old store that had been on that same lonely spot off the road for as long as he could remember. Hold on just a second. My wife is here and is talking about food, but I'm not done yet, so... Okay, come on. Phone's not cooperating today. Okay. All right, settle down, phone. All right. Hope you guys were entertained by me talking to my wife about my fast food. All right, on that same lonely spot off the road for as long as he could remember. He never stopped there. And Mom probably wouldn't either. But now he was sure she had. He took his eyes off the road and looked for any sign of trouble. Armand thought it was the most entertaining part of the stream so far. Thank you. I have to really go outside the box to entertain Armand these days, I think. He's so jaded, don't you think? He took his eyes off the road and looked for any sign of trouble. The whole place looked like trouble. He should search that creepy lot for clues. Should search that creepy lot for clues, but he knew there would be none. Whether something happened or not, there would be none. He put his eyes back on the road, reclaimed his lane, and raced south again. If he didn't find her at her house, he would have to stop there on the way back. It would be too late, though. Okay, let's do a new paragraph. Always too late. I hate you, he said out loud. The words were flat and empty. They held none of the power they had when he was 14. They were the last words he had ever said to his father, and he had held onto that truth ever since. All right. That was what would always be left between them, now and forever. He wiped, I've got a bunch of he's here, so let's do Tony. Tony wiped his eyes and drove on because there was nothing else he could do. All right. Good stuff. Okay. He called her at the 2-hour mark. straight to voicemail with no rings. He left no message. Tony figured he had tempted fate too much already with his cursed text. He called again at the 2 hour and 15-minute mark. Same result, 3 more times, leading to hour 3, and Tony ripped through Phoenix proper to get to Regal Ranch. He did pass a police car without slowing. If the guy decided to pull him over, Tony wasn't sure if he would explain why he was speeding or not. It started... Hold on, I'm going to add something here. It started with the death of my father, he said out loud. Okay. The car parked in the median did not move before it vanished behind him. He thought maybe... Okay, that needs to be a period and a new sentence. He thought maybe it had been an empty decoy. Tony exited and paid attention to the final turns as best he could. Let's say exited the highway, otherwise it sounds like he leapt from the moving car. That could happen, but not in this. That's not what this story is going to be. He saw exploding bears and exited his car as quickly as he could without stopping. Tony exited the highway. All right, that is a much less interesting idea than facing exploding bears, but that's what's happening in this story. Tony exited the highway and paid attention to the final turns as best he could while planning her funeral in his head. What would the search be like? How long before they found out the truth? He spotted her little house as he made his way to the opening of her neighborhood. He did not see her vehicle. It could have been in the open carport, but he didn't think so. He slowed down as he cruised toward her house. There were a few kids in this development and a lot of older people. In all his fear for his mother's safety, he did not want to put other families through the same, let's say, kind of loss. Same kind of loss. All right. In the home stretch here. Turning on her curved drive that weaved between other bungalows, one of her neighbors waved. She was a nice lady, older than Mom, but still spry. She collected Mom's mail while Mom was away. Tony waved back and curved toward Mom's place. The Subaru was here, but it was parked at an odd diagonal angle to the carport. All right. The house had partially hidden it as Tony passed on the main road, on a diagonal. He pictured the abandoned vehicle on the side of the road. He pictured a T-shirt flapping in the dry winds as cars passed by without investigating. She had made it this far at least, but this was not how she parked. This was not how she normally parked. All right. Tony stopped behind her and jumped out of the vehicle. He had his phone in hand to call for help as soon as he knew what was wrong. He was going to get to see her one more time, it seemed, for better or worse, unless she had been abducted from here. He rounded the corner to find the side doors open, just hanging open like she had been interrupted mid-Tony. He jumped... Perfect. All right. He jumped and spun to see his mother standing wide-eyed with one hand over her chest as if slowing her heart. Wouldn't that be something if he startled her into a heart attack? Let's say she'd go just like Dad. All right. What are you doing here? He moved in and gripped her in a tight hug. She patted his back and spoke into his shoulder. What's wrong? What happened? He let her go and tried to come up with a lie on the fly that didn't make him sound crazy. Oh, there was a thing I needed to do down at... Tony, what is it? His face contorted and he said, I had a bad feeling and I just had to come down to rid myself of it. Okay, well, everything is fine. Are you okay now? He nodded and turned away. Sorry, I'm being weird. I'll get out of your hair. After driving all this way, she grabbed his sleeve. It'd be dark by the time you got home. Just stay the night and you can head out in the morning. Since you're here, help me bring in groceries. How are you only just getting groceries home now? She laughed and said, well, you have to follow those lines on the floor now. Let's say on the floor of grocery stores now. So every time I forgot something, I had to circle back around. Then I talked with Doris for a long while after I picked up my mail. I literally just opened the door. All right, literally just opened, let's say, my door. Good stuff. Feeling foolish, Tony helped his mom bring in the groceries. He hadn't brought a toothbrush, deodorant, or a change of clothes. After tonight, he'd have to leave her behind again and fight those feelings that... No, hold on, let me add some more thing here. I love you, Mom. She smiled, and her eyes glistened just a little. I love you too, Tony. Was that enough to lift a curse? All right, I like that better. Now let's see if this last paragraph still holds up. Feeling foolish, Tony helped his mom bring in the groceries. He hadn't brought a toothbrush. All right, I need to spell brought correctly. Brought a toothbrush, deodorant, or even a change of clothes. After tonight, he'd have to leave her behind again and fight those feelings that it might be the last time he ever saw her.